grown up. Standing in front of your bibliography is always thrilling, a bit scary and intimidating. So let me welcome you to Sheffield for the latest conference of the Association of Internet Researchers. Now, I'm Nick John, I'm the president of AIR, yeah, also that. Now, this is another AIR conference, but it's not just any old Association of Internet Researchers conference. It is the 25th installation of this conference. And if you want to know how it all started, just look out for these people and ask them to tell you a story or two about the olden days. So in a moment, we'll be getting on with some more introductions and other bits and pieces. But first of all, I'm thrilled to invite the Right Worshipful, the Lord Mayor of Sheffield, Jane Dunn, to welcome us to this wonderful city.
Good evening and welcome to this fantastic great city of Sheffield. It is a real pleasure to be here as Lord Mayor. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of history because I was asked to do that by my fantastic team at the side, some of whom are friends, which was a lovely, lovely surprise, is that I am Sheffield's 127th Lord Mayor. But I am only the 21st female Lord Mayor, that was just what I was hoping for. I am also the first single woman in Sheffield ever to wear the chain. And the first single mum. Thank you. Right. Thank you. That has made my evening. That was absolutely great. But it's because Sheffield is a strong, welcoming city. And most of you, if you've not already seen it, just out there is the Women of Steel statue. And I think that symbolises our city and how it constantly rebirths and regrows, and how that we embrace and we look after those that many don't. So it's absolutely great that you have chosen to have your 25th conference here. Now, we are known as the Steel City because of our innovation in the steel production, which has left an indelible mark in the world. Our city's industrial powers not only fueled the growth of the UK, but also set global standards in engineering and craftsmanship. Today, the steel mills are no longer dominate our skyline, but the spirit of innovation and industry continues to go from strength to strength. Sheffield has been transformed into a hub for advanced manufacturing and technology, which blends our heritage with forward-looking vision. This evolution mirrors the very essence of your conference's theme of industry. Though you may not be practitioners in the high-tech fields, your scholarly work on the internet is crucial. The internet itself is a testament to human ingenuity and industrial progress. It has revolutionized how we connect, communicate, and collaborate, much like the industrial advancements that once defined Sheffield. So as you delve into your discussions and share your insights, I hope you find inspiration in Sheffield's journey from an industrial powerhouse to a modern city embracing technology and innovation. May your conference be as productive and impactful as the legacy of industry that Sheffield proudly upholds. And we are also, as I said, a really compassionate city. We are the first city of sanctuary, And I am really, really proud of how the strength of people in Sheffield embrace everyone. So the fact that you have come from all over the world is absolutely fantastic. So please enjoy your stay. Enjoy our industrial heritage. Visit our museums. But most of all, have fun and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to introduce Professor Kate Dommett, Professor of Digital Politics and the Director of Research and Innovation at the Faculty of Social Sciences in the University of Sheffield, to welcome us to the university.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome you on behalf of the university, but as a digital researcher myself, it's just such a pleasure to see so many familiar faces in the room. So I just wanted to tell you something a little bit about the university. So we're quite unique in that Sheffield University was partly funded by penny donations from the people of the city. And as a result, the institution has a really kind of strong, socially engaged approach. And I really think that that mirrors the research of so many people in the room, you know, really trying to understand how technology and the internet is affecting society and how it can have this, you know, socially transformative effect that we need to understand and navigate. Now, within Sheffield University, we're so lucky to have a really strong group of researchers working in this area. You're going to come across a number of them over the coming days, ranging from the kind of Centre of Machine Intelligence to the Digital Good Network, and we also have a Digital Society Network. So I'm sure that you're going to come into contact with a number of researchers, and I really hope that you get a chance to exchange ideas. But I will leave you with this. So Sheffield has the highest student retention rate in the country because people love this city. But we're famous for three things. So we have the highest density of green spaces, the highest density of climbing walls, and the highest density of microbreweries of any city in the UK. So I really hope that you enjoy all of them while you're here and have a great conference.
Thank you very much, Kate. One more person that you need to meet is your fabulous local committee chair, Dr. Isabel Gerard.
You're all here, oh my gosh. I would cry if I wasn't so stressed. So welcome to Sheffield. Thank you so much for traveling to be here. We really could not be more grateful. So this is your local organizing committee. I really wanted to be able to put names to faces. So I'm Isabel Gerard and I'm based at the University of Sheffield and I am your local chair.
Hello everyone, I'm Tim Highfield. Until a month ago I was at the University of Sheffield. I am now at the University of Warwick. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Mon Rodriguez. Until a month ago, I was at Sheffield Hallam University, and now I'm at the University of Sheffield.
Hello everyone, I'm Leah Jiang. I'm currently at the University of Sheffield.
Hi everyone, I'm Jia Hong Chen and I'm based at the University of Sheffield as well.
Hi, I'm Ruth Della. I'm from Sheffield Hallam University, and along with Isabel and Leanne Ray, I'm one of your programme chairs. And we also want to thank a couple of people who didn't want to get on stage with us tonight. So from the professional services team at the University of Sheffield, who've just kind of done so much work with their team behind the scenes, Janine Brown, Katie Brown and Janine Wilson.
We hope you have a wonderful time at the conference. Please let us know if you have any questions at all and enjoy your keynote. Thank you.
Okay. So as is traditional at this event, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. I promise it won't take too long. AIR has a code of conduct. I encourage and invite you to read it. It reflects our commitment to providing a respectful, a supportive, and harassment-free conference experience for everyone. If you are being harassed, if you notice that someone else is, or if you have any other concerns, you can email codeofconduct@air.org, or you can approach myself or Sarah Roberts, who is the Vice President of AIR, who was sitting here a moment ago and will pop through one of these doors, I imagine, it shortly. That's one thing. Air.social is our very own social medium on Mastodon in the Fediverse. And it is the social medium that Air will be using during the conference. What we love about Air.social is that we control it. We moderate it. It's ours. It's not owned by billionaires with bottomless pockets, for instance. If you're a member of AIR, you're entitled to an account on our server, and if you haven't signed up for one, I encourage you to do so, and we look forward to seeing you there. When you are there, this is the conference hashtag. So use that, and we'll be able to find what you're wanting to say. I also want to remind you, or maybe tell those of you who don't know, that this is, for the first time ever, a hybrid conference. This means that there are 3 rooms on the university campus, from which we will be streaming out all the time. There will be 1 or 2 people streaming in, presenting remotely. So you just may want to be aware when you're in those rooms that we're broadcasting to, beyond the walls of that room. Other important things. You have one of these. Please wear it when you're at the conference. It helps people to know who you are, but it also helps everyone to know that you are in the right place and you're meant to be, having these drinks or doing that thing. One also rather important thing to mention is, of course, the drink tickets. They're in your little white envelope. They look like that. The top one is green. It maybe looks a little bit yellow. No, that looks pretty green. So you'll be needing those this evening for our drinks downstairs shortly. You also have a bus ticket in your envelope. The bus tickets have 2 different times on them. It's completely random. If you can find someone to swap with, then go ahead. If you know that you're not coming on Saturday, please find Michelle at the registration desk and give your ticket back to her. That just helps us a little bit. Okay, I think. Well, Michelle, Michelle is sitting behind the black curtain there, which is really where Michelle prefers to be. And I'm not going to call her out. But Michelle is around to help with everything. She can tell you whether your shirt matches your shoes, whether now is the right time to tell them that you love them. It is. And well, anything, you can, try her. And finally, in time-honored tradition, I would like to ask those of you who are attending your first AIR conference to raise your hand. And the rest of us will go, yay, welcome to AIR. Your life will never be the same again. AIR prides itself on being a warm and welcoming conference. We believe that you can approach anyone and start a conversation with them, and they will engage in conversation with you. You're invited to try that out downstairs after our keynote talk. But also to help this, we'd like to invite AIR first-timers to a first-timers lunch on Thursday. This isn't anything formal. What you'll do is you'll pick up your lunch from the Octagon and you'll head to the Inox lounge area and you will chat with other people who have never been to AIR before either. Simple as that. Okay, but now let's get down to business. As befitting a conference held in one of the cities in which the Industrial Revolution began, the theme for this year's conference is industry. And we're very lucky to have with us this evening Dr. Sita Gangadharan from the Department of Media and Communications at the London School of Economics. Her work focuses on inclusion, exclusion, marginalization, as well as on questions of democracy and social justice and technological governance. She currently leads two projects, our Data Bodies, which examines the impact of data collection and data-driven technologies on marginalized communities in the US, and Justice, Equity and Technology, which studies data-driven technologies and infrastructures in the context of European civil society. This evening, though, Dr. Gangadharan will talk to us about technological refusal and the right time for it, given the power of industry to reify the social relations that may accompany the diffusion of new technologies. We'll have time for some questions after Dr. Gangadharan's presentation. And if you're watching on the interwebs, you can type questions into the Zoom webinar interface, and they will somehow make their way to my phone. So without further ado, Sita, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to begin with thanks to Nick John, the organizing committee, and all of the support staff that have helped support my invitation to speak to all of you tonight. I had the honor of interacting with the AIR community during lockdown in 2021. And I distinctly remember my first AIR conference in 2005 in Chicago. It is indeed a very warm and welcoming community. So thank you. It is truly a privilege to be here. I need to acknowledge my collaborators, both past and present, among whom I count not just people I co-author academic works with, but also people who are steeped in practice and who I learn from, learn with, and share in collective struggle and celebration. I'm here tonight to share public reflections on lessons learned from past pushbacks against socio-technical systems and the question of timeliness in technological refusal. I want to do this by going backwards in time so that I can explain to you what I mean by technological refusal, how this idea has evolved, what I mean by it, and why refusal requires attention to issues of timeliness. And then I want to go a little bit forward in time to speculate on potential new powers of a new socio-technical system, the quantum internet, and the question it poses, the questions it poses untimely refusal. So what do I mean by technological refusal? The concept has to do with the politics of technological governance. I take equal parts of inspiration from Ruha Benjamin and others writing about informed consent, informed refusal, and medical and scientific research, from Nancy Fraser and her valorization of contestation in democratic practice, and from the very stories shared by people that I and collaborators encounter when speaking to them about their experiences with data-driven systems and the ability to meet their basic human needs. In the past decade of research, I've been drawn to instances of refusal and see them as moments of political possibility. Now, not every encounter has to do with refusal. There is also a lot of resignation. On the one hand, people we've talked to in cities across the United States have spoken about a sense of helplessness, a feeling of being coerced into adopting socio-technical systems and adapting to them, whether they like it or not. This might be in the context of finding housing in the case of unhoused individuals we spoke with in Los Angeles, or in the context of finding meaningful employment after returning from prison in Charlotte, North Carolina. On the other hand, people we talked to were also very defiant. They shrugged off or shirked the problem of being categorized, classified, and targeted. And this pertains to whether it was both correctly categorized and targeted or incorrectly categorized and targeted. This defiance or disobedience I've written is akin to that contentious action that has historically been the domain of ordinary or conventional politics. To draw an analogy, if civil disobedience is one of the ways in which individuals and groups articulate their political will to ruling powers, i.e. the state, technological disobedience or technological refusal is one of the ways in which individuals and groups articulate their political will to the current ruling powers, which I would argue is an amalgam of the state, private actors, the private tech sector, and increasingly the technology itself. Technological refusal is a political act of defiance, and it stands in the face of claims of the regulative power of technologies, code as law, and architectural power. Now, over the past several years, two major critiques on the idea of technological refusal are worth noting. The first has to do with the morally vague nature of the concept. Some might say, if we support technological refusal, we might just be aligning with populists, the irrational public, or the angry mob. To give one example, several years back, anti-vaxxers, who more often than not were aligned with populists in the United States, United Kingdom, Italy, and other countries, coordinated a number of attacks on 3G towers in several different cities. These actions are disobedient, and they do connect to the idea of not settling for the terms and conditions that socio-technical systems and their owners or managers, operators give to us. But there's something awry here. While they speak to agency, the broader politics of populism, at least for me, are unambiguously tied to the exacerbation of social divisions, the denial of some groups' humanity, and assertions of supremacy. The second critique has to do with the lack of or under acknowledgement of institutional dimensions of technological refusal. What happens next after people obfuscate themselves in a data-driven system, or conversely make themselves visible and a system that wants to disappear individuals into a sea of not so special data points. We may extol individuals and their actions, but these individual actions exist and are both enabled and disabled within organizational fields. So the second critique is, as attractive as it may be to talk about individual pushback, institutional conditions matter as well. Since encountering these challenges, my response has been to conceive of technological refusal both as a normative concept as much as an empirically discoverable phenomenon. Normatively, technological refusal reflects an ideal for disobedience, defiance, resistance, refusal in relation to the very political questions of safety and belonging in the socio-technical order. Technological refusal, as seen through the lens of safety and belonging, therefore becomes capacious enough to address individual and collective actions, but not too capacious in the sense that we might overfit the model and include scary groups or movements that might be okay with violent supremacy while they push back on socio-technical systems. This normative definition sets up a threshold to consider the empirical, what these acts of defiance consist in, who is involved, not just the singular individual, but also a messy group, a coordinated movement, an institution, a set of institutions, and how safety and belonging manifest themselves in the socio-technical order. Okay, so what does all this refusal have to do with timeliness? There's a third critique of this concept. The when. Beyond all of this normative stuff, safety, belonging, blah, 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 people, power, let's get real. Let's get real is my shorthand way of referencing a slight indebtedness to American pragmatism. What let's get real means is let's think of the practical consequences of being disobedient. So you want to rebel. So what? What will it change as a result? An easy way to think about the pragmatist's challenge to the idea of technological refusal is in relation to the many movements to ban a particular particular technology, and then the letdown which occurs when a ban is not upheld. Another example that I learned of more recently took place in France in and around the recent Olympics. Here, several organizations came to campaign against the use of algorithmic video surveillance. Much of this campaign is well documented and has been led by a digital rights organization called La Quadrature du Net. This anti-surveillance campaign is plainly about technological refusal. In May, La Quad stated, "By all means, we must assert our refusal of permanent control of our actions through algorithmic video surveillance, denounce these experiments, document the illegal projects that keep on proliferating, and organize ourselves locally to defeat the techno-police. Together, let's fight to ensure public spaces are not permanently transformed into a place of police repression, and that instead, our towns and villages are spaces of freedom, creativity, and encounters." The deployment of this surveillance infrastructure has an impact on who gets targeted and tracked, not only in the context of the Olympics, but also post-Olympics. Structure would be put, or is now being put, to additional uses in the name of security. This highly sophisticated system absolutely implicates who gets to feel safe, who gets to belong. As community advocates like Sophia Arouche and Safia Ullman have noted, decisions to implement video surveillance connect to France's long history of surveillance, colonialism, and racialized criminalization. But in the midst of learning about this incredible campaign, I encountered a provocative assessment shared in discussion, a sobering assessment, namely, it's too late. It's too little. The technology has already been developed. The partnerships of the state with private technology vendors have already been made. The plan for urban development and gentrification already happened years ago. Paris won the bid for the Olympics in 2017 and had begun preparing for the Olympics many years before. There's a nagging sense that protest, refusal, should have happened long ago, since now public and private sectors have settled the field of action and made it difficult to roll back implementation in the present and in the near future. Too little, too late. This feels like a challenge and a critique of acts of refusal, that they are often not timely or not timely enough, that challengers and/or protesters should have acted earlier to prevent certain pieces from falling into place and to alter the technological path of dependence. That even though we might not like to admit it, as important as our agentic efforts may be, we're still stuck with the socio-technical systems that don't give us the freedom, equality, or dignity that we deserve. So that leads me to a question. How do we even begin thinking about earlier acts of refusal? For better and for worse, we do not have to engage in any speculative exercise. We have quantum computing to help us walk it through. So here's where my talk takes a radical turn. I want to identify what refusal could or should be with regards to this specific technology, to contemplate what types of pushback and protest quantum might invite. To do that, I have to explain what quantum internet is first, to set expectations. So I'm going to describe quantum internet in some degree of technical detail. I'll then talk about its promises. I'll provide the context of the support and direction it is receiving at this stage of industrial development. And that will lead me to a final reflection on the possibility for timely technological refusal. What is quantum internet? Quantum internet is a new internet that doesn't exist yet. And that's in part because quantum computing is still in development. Quantum internet depends on these advancements in quantum computers. What is useful to know is that quantum computers are extremely powerful. They are powerful because they exploit things happening at the subatomic level to calculate or crunch numbers. What is also useful to know is that quantum computing marks a radical break with classical computing. While classical computers rely on classical bits, ones and zeros, quantum computers rely on qubits, which can exist as zeros, ones, or both states, also known as superposition. If you left off learning about physics many years back, a more straightforward way of comparing bits and qubits is simply that qubits allow for more mathematical possibilities and more mathematical problem solving. As one promotional video I watched stated, the computational capacity of quantum computers is like going from an abacus to an iPhone. So that gives you a basic sketch of quantum computers. Quantum internet is a network of quantum computers. Networked nodes create and make use of things happening at the subatomic level, specifically related to the phenomenon known as entanglement, over long distances to transmit quantum information. We're basically talking about a brand new internet. It's coming. There are many promises of the quantum internet, and one of the more general one pertains to saving time on calculations. Because computational capacity is greater, it takes less time to make discoveries. Apart from this radical yet general improvement, probably the most discussed promise pertains to the secure transmission of quantum information. This is in part due to the properties of qubits. Qubits cannot be copied. Any attempts to copy them result in detection. So the quantum internet will be more secure than the classical internet that we currently have. This possibility for secure, high-powered computing has instant implications for states, cybersecurity, and national security. Once you start taking less time to compute, you can crack codes more quickly. So let me just get a show of hands to ask, how many of you have ever used a password cracker, like Kaspersky's, right? So there's a thing called a password cracker. I've used it in privacy literacy workshops with children. What you do is you ask somebody to put in not your real password, but a fake password that sort of emulates your own passwords. And this site will basically tell you how long it takes to crack your password. So kids will just put in 1, 2, 3, dog, right? And then they'll find out that in less than 1 second, it's over. When we think about quantum computing, the time for calculation drops dramatically. And for these reasons, governments are already thinking about how to migrate sensitive information to quantum computers, since classically encrypted information will be easy to break. That also raises big questions about who gets to determine the thresholds for sensitive information, and about transparency and accountability, especially in terms of how the military or other state actors put networked quantum computers to use. Secure, high-powered computing has implications for private sectors that are already dependent on computational power. Sectors such as health and finance are lining up to understand and make use of quantum capabilities. Quantum has already succeeded in factoring numbers and simulating chemical reactions. And the applicability of quantum to things like brain science or climate modeling and more is fascinating. This also raises the prospect of a two-tier internet. Since networked quantum nodes, so this raises the prospect of a two-tiered internet, one for military, health, finance, and other computationally intensive sectors, and the other classical one for the rest of us. We know that this two-tier system will cause all sorts of questions and problems, especially since quantum will piggyback on existing internet infrastructure, since networked quantum nodes will rely on fiber optic infrastructure to scale. There are also questions around the amount of energy that will be used to support such high-powered quantum networking and communication. While quantum speeds up computing processes and saves time, there remain questions about whether computationally intensive discovery will simultaneously require high levels of energy consumption. While quantum computing is still in development and quantum internet thus much further down the line, we're on the brink of quantum mania. Perhaps more important than the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics being awarded to 3 scientists for experiments on quantum entanglement, we know quantum mania is coming because the money is flowing. And global competitivity is the end game. 2 landmark pieces of legislation in the United States have played a significant role. The National Quantum Initiative Act of 2018 and the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. NQIA created a framework for research and development and authorized approximately $1.2 billion in funding from 2019 to 2023 for a variety of initiatives across key agencies. The CHIPS and Sciences Act amended the NQIA to authorize further research and development, instruct NIST to develop standards for quantum networking and communication, establish a Department of Energy program to facilitate access to quantum for research purposes, and require the National Science Foundation to support the integration of quantum in the STEM curriculum at all educational levels. Besides the activity happening at the federal level in the United States, individual states are jockeying for a leadership position. Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois has ambitions to turn the state into a global quantum capital. Illinois is in the process of developing a quantum and microelectrics park on the southeast side of Chicago. California-based company Psi Quantum, one of the key players, is poised to receive $200 million in tax breaks and $92 million from the Manufacturing Illinois Chips for Real Opportunity Act. The state is meanwhile dedicating $500 million for the campus project. Although there is no unified data about corporate investments in quantum, Crunchbase reported in November 2023 that investments in startups for the year alone reached more than $1 billion, as compared with $788 million in 2022 and $814 million in 2021. Even if you don't understand quantum physics, or can only vaguely discern what physicists, computer scientists, or engineers might be up to for the next several decades, it is useful to hang on to several points raised by this story of technological advancement. There is a very large train moving this quantum industry. Billions of dollars from states and investors, including the usual suspects like Amazon and Microsoft, are being poured into research and development, standards development, and to a lesser extent, monetarily, STEM education. The connections between military and quantum advancement seem pretty unambiguous, and the connections between particular sectors, winning sectors, also seem well established. In this sense, the dominant narratives on quantum seem fairly straightforward, and in some cases, very familiar. If we can delve back into the history of the classical internet, it does sound familiar. Those narratives include, this new technology is cool, we'll do cool things. Let's become world leaders and beat the competition. Getting from pre-commercial to commercial is the most important thing that matters. And with quantum, the world will be a better place. These are familiar narratives. So what might technological refusal look like at this stage? The inclination might be to develop counter narratives point out hypocrisies or contradictions, identify what a more equal quantum development might entail, or a more just approach to sharing risks and benefits might entail. This is laudable, and we could probably sketch this out here today in this room rather quickly. But I want to urge a different path. Refusal at this early stage should be about finding a new language that challenges computation from within on its own terms. An obvious place involves understanding what fallibility or reflexivity means in computation. Reflexivity is the questioning of beliefs, assumptions, practices. And we are taught that reflexivity brings pause and potentially course correction of those beliefs, assumptions, and practices. What is the computational analog to this? I think we need to identify this with haste. And the reason is reflexivity is refusal internalized within computation itself. In this manner, refusal can be endogenous, not exogenous to quantum sciences. This proposal stems from an observation of how computer science, cryptography, engineering, and other fields have dealt with critiques of technology as politics, of technology as having values. Individual academics or researchers who sound the alarm get easily shut down. The example of Phil Rogaway from the University of California, Davis comes to mind. Rogaway wrote a controversial piece wherein he explained that cryptography rearranged power. It's an article on the moral nature of cryptography, or the moral character of cryptography. Specifically, he spoke of, quote, a scientist engages in what I'll call implicit politics by influencing power relations as a byproduct of technical work. Politics is about power. Who has how much of it and what sort, end quote. And so the article goes on to explain how even seemingly beneficial innovations, such as differential privacy, constrain fields of action or political possibilities. He explained that differential privacy never offers up an alternative of collecting less data or no data. And in fact, this is a very useful argument in that it offers an elegant way of understanding why secure data does not easily correspond with greater equality. In other words, he's essentially saying that differential privacy congeals the power of particular actors. And we can see this with Apple. Rogaway's stance was highly controversial. And like many before him and many after him who have explored the implicit politics of technology from within the discipline, he ended up leaving. On his website, he writes, in recent years, I grew increasingly skeptical of the claimed benefits of computer science, which routinely seem dwarfed by the harms we help cause. Correspondingly, I shifted much of my attention to social and ethical issues. I retired from the University of California, Davis in July of 2024. I'm sad to leave USCD and would like to continue my teaching, but my views had drifted from those of my peers to the point that it felt uncomfortable to continue where I was. What happened to Rogaway and to others like him motivates my thinking that early refusal to the quantum internet must involve discovery of what reflexivity entails from within the logic of computation. It doesn't seem enough to tell people about computer science's implicit politics. It has to be shown from within the language of computation itself. Show, don't tell. A reflexivity within computation generates inbuilt possibilities for refusal. Now, this type of engagement likely means that physicists, computer scientists, and engineers are in the hot seat. Yes, also philosophers of mathematics. These actors are closer to understanding computational complexities in the language that these complexities occur. But that doesn't mean scholars like those in the room here or other representatives of different communities of practice are out of the picture. Discovering what reflexivity entails is a joint enterprise involving many different members of epistemic communities capable of translation and interpretation, of interoperability of quantum logics and our many current logics. What this requires are institutional conditions that make these discoveries and translations possible, and importantly, independent from the pressures to advance and develop. That might be within the confines of the academy. It might, for example, involve ways of thinking how to cross-subsidize independent research within the university. So using some of the funds from industrial research grants and setting aside funds to protect independent research. It also might require thinking of different institutional settings, since the academy, in some ways, is already an interested party. What does this imply for timely refusal? Let me state how this argument has unfolded. Technological refusal is a concept that reaffirms the agency of individuals and groups in the face of socio-technical systems that govern. People and movements engage in acts of refusal, but these actions often feel too little, too late. In the case of quantum internet, which is currently in its pre-commercial phase, there are already many reasons to feel anxious about the maldistribution of risks and benefits. Entrenchment of big tech, military or state overreach, bad applications, two-tier internet, climate impact, to name a few. While this anxiety might kick in a reflex to respond with alternatives and fight with counter-narratives, a different path forward entails discovering what reflexivity means in the language of computation, in ways that make refusal endogenous, not exogenous to computation. In this sense, timely technological refusal is about generativity, as opposed to destruction or negation. It's about creating spaces for fields of action, of political possibility. Now, some of you might take offense here in the sense of, who are you calling generative or not generative? Doesn't that generativity occur among those who create counter-narratives? When you propose and enact methods of sharing risks and benefits more equitably, isn't that generative? Yes. And at the same time, however, I'm cognizant of the ways in which acts of refusal and acts of counter-narrative generation have been captured and co-opted, and of the momentum that gets depleted along the way despite best intentions. People, groups, movements, we get tired of losing. Against this backdrop, I offer these reflections on timeliness and technology. Look forward to your comments and questions. Thank you.
very much indeed. We have a couple of mics. Yes, we do. So if you put your hand up nice and high, we can take some questions. There's one over here. Over here, okay.
Hello, thank you very much for the talk. My name's Ros Williams. I work at the University of Sheffield. I was interested to know more about how we guard against embedding that kind of responsiveness with, for the example, there's people like Ro Benjamin who talks about technological refusal or informed refusal, and she's talking there about biomedical ethics and bioethics. And the critique of bioethics is that there became an entire industry embedded within a scientific practice that then just allows scientific practice to continue to be problematic. It also is critique is that it's a handmaiden of science. So I wonder how you respond to that kind of critique if there were to be some sort of sub-discipline within quantum computing that then just became a handmaiden of quantum computing and enabled some of this practice and allows people just to say, oh, these are our ethicists, and they've given us the gold badge to continue forward.
Thank you, Ross. That's a great question. I think my response is that I feel like in terms of the ways that historically groups, individuals, coordinated movements have tried to push back on, for example, big tech, that it feels like we're at a moment where we need something new to sort of help the momentum pick up again, because there is really a sense of depletion, in particular in the United States, where people who have organized for net neutrality or, back in the day, intellectual property or fair use, right? We're seeing a sort of inversion point where some of the struggles have lost their energy. And by suggesting that there be this sort of place for independent scholarship and independent idea generation on reflexivity in computing, I think I'm trying to move away from that field of ethics or that identification, that sort of sector or slice that focuses on ethics, responsibility, trust in ways that are already sort of institutionally and industrially aligned with key actors, right? Exactly as you said, right? We have Benjamin and other scholars who illustrate the fact that often, yes, it just becomes another way of legitimizing industry action. And I'm saying that I think actually this way of thinking about reflexivity in a language that, I'm sort of imagining it as a language that is not necessarily spoken, right? It's a language of mathematics to a certain extent. So that I feel starts to open the possibility for different kinds of action and organizing than what currently exists. So yes, there is a threat, but I think that if we are able to identify either new institutional forms or new institutional vessels to nurture this, that it will be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, thank you very much for your response. I'm right here. So I had a question about the foundation for the refusal itself, whether it is a technology you are refusing in the sense, the quantum mania, or whether it is an underlying fundamental paradigm or worldview. And so to explicit the question, basically when we're thinking about technology, we're thinking about collapsing possibility, right? When you try to turn on your phone, there isn't a 1 in 2 chances that it turns on or not, right? So the whole idea with quantum is possibilities, probabilities, we don't know, right? And so you're using technology to reduce uncertainty also towards human behavior. That is, the whole idea of privacy, camera surveillance, is that you're collapsing the possibility for humans to behave in a certain way. You're trying to predict everything. You're trying to calculate everything to make sure everything is under control and predictable. So your technology is a way of collapsing probability to ensure that it always works. And so are you opposing the technology, or are you opposing materialism or the clockwork universe model, which is about collapsing everything into something that can be modeled, predicted, and thereby kind of almost life rebelling against trying this attempt to pin it down, to collapse its probabilities and possibilities, and to know for certain what it's going to do next, right? And so is that the underlying fundamental motivation for the refusal, or is it merely socio-technical in the sense of, looking at, where power goes or whatever? So yeah, I hope my question is clear.
That's also a great question. Thank you. So, I mean, and also a very difficult question to answer, right? Because, I mean, I think my reply is a little bit of both, right? Because the example of Rogaway, I mean, it really sits with me in that, here's somebody that was from the field and attempted to put forward some ideas that traveled far and wide, but then were shut down. And so that felt like an invitation to think about, well, what would it be if that sort of, if you were able to discover what politics meant within numbers at a very abstract level, what on earth would that look like? Now, I think that's relatable to this process in quantum physics and quantum science, where you're collapsing possibilities and probabilities, right? Beyond thinking of them in tandem, I don't think I can get any more specific, because really the exercise was meant to walk us through and think about something that feels lacking in computer science and related fields, something that feels very lacking because there is no check, there is no internal check, there is no internal reflection. And so it feels like it's waiting to be discovered, and that's what I'm urging.
Hi, Sita. Thank you so much for your keynote. There's so much to chew on and such food for thought. If I may indulge a bit, it's a two-parter. One is, I wonder if this is, of course, an amazing radical idea, technological refusal, but I wonder if we can be even more radical and sort of start questioning the underlying capitalist systems that lead us to keep growing, to keep developing. Because if we go back to the excerpts of the quotes that you're talking about, the way quantum is being described, I think that potential of commercializing, of growing, of developing, of gaining more profit and power, that's where the problem lies. Because we've started sort of, a lot of indigenous Indian communities prefer to value elders who give away their wealth, who give away and have acts of charity as part of their value to society, versus we have now started looking at personal wealth accumulation as those who we respect in society. So that's one. And second, maybe an idea to develop that language would be to have more scientists and mathematicians and philosophers talk to arts, humanities, and social sciences. Thanks.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more with the second part of your comment. And I think we don't do it enough. And I think currently we do it in very performative ways, where in a large scientific grant, for example, you might see a historian invited, or an ethnographer and an artist. And that's a formula. And that problem of formula, which was reflected in our first question too, I think also relates to your first part of your comment, right? I couldn't agree more, right? If we sort of look at the imaginaries that are being constructed around quantum right now, it's very much rooted in a model of growth and wealth accumulation, or this concept of value that ties to a more political economic analysis. I think what I have observed in more collective forms of refusal is that critiques that have been put forward, whether they be around racial capitalism or patriarchal capitalism, other forms of capitalism, is it seems like we're in a moment where those kinds of things get twisted around, right? And so we can see in some instances where the technology sector is using bits and pieces of discourse that is sort of exciting and sort of generative in, for example, Indigenous communities, in Black and Brown communities. And there are very specific things that are being pulled out and then used to justify technological development. And so I'm trying to simultaneously think of a way around that, because it feels like a booby trap or a dead end. That's not to say that those things and that larger sort of emphasis on growth isn't a major problem. It's just thinking about how do you sort of jujitsu things in a different way than they have been.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Gangadharan, for your talk. My name is Dyuti. I'm from Purdue University, and I research computational communication a lot. My question was like, I really like that phrase that you used, too little, too late, because I think algorithmic or technological surveillance is not a new thing. As a state machinery tool, it has always been used in the global south, in occupied territories in Palestine and Kashmir. And it kind of feels a little late for the global north to recognize that it's a big problem when it is impacting people who look like them instead of people who look like me. So as you said, quantum computing is at its pre-commercial state. What kind of checks do you think should be put in place to make sure that the power imbalance in developing the quantum computing network of people and the usage of the implications of that technological system does not fall, what should I say, does not fall adversely terribly on people in the global south or people in marginalized communities? How do we put empirical, how do we put practical checks in place to prevent it from becoming toxic?
I would say that in much of the legal scholarship that I've combed through, I don't think there is yet enough attention to safeguards, except for at this very general level. And so there is some really, I think, impressive work on thinking about legal safeguards. Again, some of them sound very familiar, right? We need to establish accountability and transparency standards. We need to think about how to establish trustworthiness, right? And so to answer your question, I mean, part of my reason for tackling a topic that is very challenging is to invite more people into the room to consider what the consequences and what needs to be said and done now. Because it is early days and we have an opportunity to shape things potentially differently. for me, I think some of the more interesting or most interesting intersections are at the level of resource extraction and the development of quantum. And I think that that is potentially one way to just draw attention to supply chain issues that maybe we thought too late about with respect to other technologies. So it's not, I don't have a very specific answer for you, but that's what I can offer now.
Thank you for a really thought-provoking tour. I enjoyed it a lot. I wanted to ask you your idea of trying to figure out how to make reflexivity endogenous to computer science. So like speaking in computer sciences terminology. How do we do that? Because I have tried for like ages to talk with computer science. Many computer scientists are gorgeous people, but a lot of them really don't take the humanities or social sciences seriously at all. They think it's nonsense what we do. Some of them get it, a lot don't. It's really difficult to try to build those bridges. Do we need to become mathematicians? Or what you were just mentioning about resource extraction, perhaps we need to figure out how to make reflexivity endogenous to capitalism, and that's really hard. So just sort of on a really practical level, what should we do?
Help. I don't want to become a computer scientist. And let's end capitalism. Okay, so what can we do? I mean, I think that I'm sort of, let me just get a show of hands of how many people here are trained in philosophy. I mean, I mean, yay, we have some. That's awesome. I think that part of what I'm imagining is in some ways, I mean, this is kind of a grand statement, so I'm probably going to kick myself after I share it, but right, thinking about debates between John Searle and Derrida, for example, or Wittgenstein and Turing. Yes, I got some yays. Let's do it. I think that actually it's worth revisiting some of these debates and extending them. And I would love to engage a broader community in that and do it together, because I think we're really ready for it. This is the moment now to be expanding those conversations and really thinking it through. So that's all really practically I can think of. But you know, part of the exciting part of being able to address a large audience like this is to say like, yay, if you're interested, can we talk? Because it's just at the level of ideas right now, but I think it's possible, right? And I think it's possible because within computer science, partly because of these highly visible moments where, for example, Timnit Gebru was fired, right? And now has her own distributed AI research organization, right? Partly because of these high profile crises within the tech sector, right? We do actually have a generation of younger computer scientists that I think have a different sensibility. And that's something to work with, right? So yes, it's tough. We can be friends with computer scientists that might not be open to these conversations, but I think there are ones that we can talk with, and we should be doing that because it really matters right now.
Thanks very much. This is a very exciting talk. Over here, sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Short and sitting down. I agree with everything that you've said and everything in your talk, but I wonder why technological refusal that puts you in the Luddite camp, which nobody welcomes, instead of technological citizenship with agency, knowledge, and the power to act. And we have a pretty well-developed discourse of technological citizenship that brings up the dialogue not in a Luddite adversarial conversation, but one that you can bring people in. and bring it up also into the, rank and file of state politics. And so this is, and I'm speaking at it from someone who lives this world that you're talking. I live in data science, computer science, communication and media studies, and geomatics. And I can tell you this reflexivity after 12 years of, drinking a lot with a lot of these people, it doesn't get you very far. Even the word reflexivity gets you nowhere fast with this group of actors. So why the refusal as opposed to technological citizenship, which has a well-grounded discursive regime, if you will, which brings you into something that you can work towards as opposed to something that you're working against?
I began researching data-driven systems in minoritized and marginalized communities in 2011, and specifically in relation to data-driven systems. And it was really important in the early days to be able to say, look, these are socio-technical systems of control. They're exacerbating existing inequalities, and we need to push back. Now, I've stood here and tried to sort of, jujitsu my own concept that I've been working with to have some creative energy or creative force behind it. I'm not, I think, well, technological citizenship, partly because of, I think what was mentioned in our earlier questioner over here, right? Thinking about the role of states, the histories of, in post-colonial contexts where the state, and not just post-colonial context, where the state has had undue power, right? And that type of control is dangerous. Citizenship also might not be the most welcoming sort of affirmative concept. But I think in general, the spirit of sort of affirmative, an affirmative and inviting approach is important.
I got way too excited about the Derrida and the Searle, sorry. But no, I'm also thinking a lot that there is precedence for this in philosophy, and I'm thinking specifically of the work of Jacques, who has done a lot of work with recursivity and contingency concepts with computer science, and then rethinking histories of Western philosophy, but also engaging with Chinese philosophy and creating that kind of paradigm shift that I believe that you're arguing for in this question of reflexivity, because it is this question of translation where terms that may have one meaning in one disciplinary context don't translate so well. So I guess, yeah, maybe thinking, maybe this is one of more of those comments instead of a question, but no, I guess my question would be is maybe the action could be in the act of translation, as you mentioned, where it's maybe we can think of how can we practically invite this act of translation into our work, especially within this context of a conference with scholars amongst so many different disciplines.
Let's go. I'm ready. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? I mean, I think this is the place, the venue to do it. And I'm going to be super excited next year. I think when hopefully there will be more of this conversation and more of this opening. So yeah, I mean, we don't only have to stick with Searle and Derrida. We can go much further and much deeper to other philosophy, other sort of traditions in philosophy to open up this conversation. So thank you.
I think that was the last question. So please join me in thanking Dr. Sita Gundaganam for a wonderful keynote speech for the Association of Internet and Philosophy Researchers. Now, Thank you so very much indeed. You can just stand here for a minute, because we're all now going to find our little green tickets and make our way through the doors at the back on that side. Yep. And we're going to go down some stairs and we can carry on the conversation over a glass of wine or orange juice, and enjoy the next couple of days, everyone. Thank you very much. Great. Crowd.